AVB, the AVnu Alliance. This is the AVnu Alliance podcast. This is the AVnu Alliance podcast, episode 1. This is the AVnu Alliance podcast, brought to you by the AVnu Alliance. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. With us today is Rick Whitfield. Rick is the AVnu Alliance president and chair. Hello, Rick.
Hi there.
Also with us is Bob Noseworthy. Bob is the chief engineer at UNH and the AVnu Alliance testing house. Welcome, Bob.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
And last but not least, Todd Akery. Todd is with the Extreme Networks and the proud owner of the very first AVnu AVB certified product. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, and hello, everybody.
Okay, so today's topic is what is AVnu Alliance? This is kind of an introductory. If you've never heard of it before, or you've heard the acronym AVB, if you've heard of the AVnu Alliance, you've been by the pavilion at the Infocomm booth or other shows. That's what kind of today is about. First up, we're going to start with Rick here, since you are the Alliance president and chair, and that seems only appropriate. What does it solve? What does AVB solve for the integrator? What does it solve for the end user? What does it solve for the technology manager at an education facility, or the designer who's trying to get all of this high bandwidth, high image resolution images across several different places?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just by way of background, so I've been with Harman for 20 years.
Okay.
I spent the majority of that in the professional group. And so when I was in the professional group, I was involved in these very large-scale installations, stadiums, big, and performing arts centers, things that are really, very tight. And, we always had this problem with the large network systems where, there's a lot of things left onto the reader. You weren't really sure about how the switches would perform or other things. And so, you just had problems, over and over again. We had lots of problems on site. There was a baseball stadium, very prominent one, and we were only a couple weeks away from opening day, an opening pitch, and the whole stadium got taken down by someone plugging a computer into the network. Just plugging it in. That's all we did. And this is the world that we've been living in, with a lot of switch configuration. Lots of hard work and also really high costs. And so what AVB really does is it solves that problem, because everything we've been doing up to this point, people can only work on the endpoints. What's left in the middle, they can't really deal with it. So they're left with a ton of manual configuration, trying to make it perform better, but you still don't know until you try it. And so with AVB, it really automates that process. It's really an intelligent, media-aware network. And so when we call them talkers and listeners, when they set up a reservation, for example, and start working, then you actually know this is going to work, because you get a reservation, that's your bandwidth, it's for the life of the reservation, and this traffic is going to flow and work. The other thing, too, is that we always ran into these limitations of single sample rate. And so you always have this problem of trying to mix audio and video on the same network, or you've got some 44.1 mixing with some 96, and all this mess. And AVB, just the way it works in the timing protocol, it's inherently multi-sample. So we can have those on the same network coexisting. Just to give another example, we did the convention center once, and there were 4 separate networks. There was a security network, a video network, an audio network, and then another one, since this was a Las Vegas convention center, a gaming network. They all had their own things. They all were working together, more or less, but basically at every end place, a portion of the casino, you had to go and deal with integration like in the analog world. You can never just route simple video and audio signals around. You have to do completely different network paths and completely different setup. Just a complete hassle. And so just getting rid of that complexity for the customer, getting rid of a lot of those service calls, having a performing network that's really high performance, scales up so you can get next gen switches, and that gives you the higher speeds. And this is what it really comes down to by working within the IEEE to get this kind of networking.
Well, and one of the things that the AVnu Alliance has worked towards is honestly making sure everything works together. One way you're doing that is the certification process, and it's not unique. Several different industries have ways. You have UL, and you have different things that people are able to send in and get them certified. But let's talk about the certification process for a second, Bob. That's kind of where you come in. You work at UH, and that's the house, right? That's where we send all of our stuff, and not we. I don't work for a manufacturer, but people like Todd send in their switches and send in their talkers and listeners. Talk for a second about the process. I mean, I let's say that I work for company ABC, and I make a talker, and so I've got this talker, and I think it's certified, and I've done my due diligence. So take me through the process of once I get that and I ship it off to you, what happens then?
Sure. So the process really starts before they even ship their product to us. The AVnu members have access to the various requirements that AVnu has developed. They have access to the test program specifications, test plans. They have access to the same tools that we'll be utilizing for the certification process in our lab for use in their in-house pre-testing, where those tools can help build confidence that they're actually ready. So much of those tests they can go through and improve their product before it even leaves their own in-house laboratory. And if they're still building confidence in their product, they can attend one of several Plugfests that AVnu hosts. And I think my involvement with that started over 4 years ago. So the AVnu Alliance has been aiding customers, or members, rather, getting ready for AVnu certification for many years. When the vendors are actually ready to send their product to us for testing, they'll either be shipping their product, looking for us to give feedback on areas that they are still trying to resolve, or they actually think they're ready, and we'll go through all the testing that's required by the AVnu certification process. It's an exhaustive suite of tests. There is something on the order of 3,900 observables that we're looking for in the different test cases and test plans. And those results are then provided back to the vendor to work through any issues if there are any. And there's absolutely aspects of interoperability and conformance testing. The conformance testing, as Rick alluded to, are derived from the various IEEE and other standards, as well as AVnu requirements that they've identified through various use cases. And then the interoperability aspect comes into play as far as just proving that these devices really truly work with other devices in the field or will work. And I like to say interoperability testing helps prove that the test coverage is adequate, that there's no holes in the standard, no holes in the conformance testing. It's a good demonstrator that the devices work now, but in concert with the conformance testing, they're both essential because the conformance testing helps predict future interoperability. So both aspects are in play in the AVnu certification, and once a device has fully met all the requirements of the program, the results provided back to the vendor, they can then apply to the AVnu Alliance with their results for actual certification. The process itself can take as little as 2 weeks at this point, and it is an iterative process, as I say, if they have to work through issues, where at least they can test many of the issues in-house to help speed their effort. And this has been going on now for over a year, I believe.
Would you say the performance standard would be more important for the certification, or would it be more the interoperability, the ability to take brand X and brand Y and make sure they work together?
Well, I'd say both are essential. I've been part of programs that only do one or the other, and you always run into this problem of conformance tests are only as good as the cases that were constructed, only as good as the test plans, only as good as the standards. And there's been a lot of effort into them, and as I mentioned, there's a large number of them that are looking for compliance. However, to build that final confidence that systems actually work in practical situations as defined by the interoperability tests, the two are really essential to marry together and provide that end confidence that the certification has merit in considerations when it comes to, is this product actually going to work in deployed situations, be they tested through the certification program or a future use case that is an evolution of what certification is validating.
Very good. Todd, you're with Extreme Networks, and you have, like I said in the introduction, you are the proud owner of the very first AVB certified product. For you guys, talk a little bit about your first switch, and then that's what Extreme Networks does is they make switches. Talk about that product, and then some of the other ones that you've been working on since then to get those also certified.
Sure. So we're very proud to have the first certified product. It's actually a family of switches. The Summit 440 is what it's called, Summit X440, and there's actually 14 different variations of that switch. Because there are many different combinations of number of ports, so there can be models that have 12 ports, models that have 24 ports, models that have 48 ports, and some of them have 10 gigabit uplink. Some of them are all copper, some of them are all fiber, some of them are PoE plus capable, and so all those different combinations net out to 14 different models that are available and certified as the first AVB product, this family of switches. We're very happy about that, and selling quite a few of them actually, to be honest. And the other plans for us is to take additional models of our fixed Ethernet switches through the certification process. So we have at Extreme Networks, we have our operating system, which is called XOS, and XOS is ubiquitous across all of our platforms. So we really think that since we've gotten this platform through, the other platforms will be fairly straightforward because the software is exactly the same. The only difference really is the little bit of software that is different communicating to the hardware, like the packet processor and silicon or the CPU that happens to be running on those switches might be a little different, but that's really an API change or an SDK change and very minor in terms of the software. So we feel fairly confident that the rest of the products that we submit will go fairly quickly, and we've probably addressed the majority, if not all of the bugs through the first cycle with the Summit 440. So in that vein, what we have going forward is we've already submitted 2 additional families, the Summit X460, which is another Gig-E platform. This one's a little bit more robust in terms of it has a lot of carrier Ethernet in place, so it has things like removable power supplies and redundant power supplies so that you can swap them out if they fail in the field, and it has that redundancy built in. And it has a larger scale in terms of CPU power, and some of the table sizes are significantly bigger than the 440 platform. But both the 440 and the 460 are gigabit Ethernet platforms. One's just a larger scale than the other with some redundancy capabilities in place. It too has several members of the family, meaning different combinations of port numbers and fiber and copper and PoE plus. And then, so that's one family that's already submitted, the 460. And then another family that's also submitted is the 670. And that Summit X670 is a 10 gigabit copper rack family, and it has 10 gigabit copper, 10 gigabit fiber, and it also has 40 gigabit uplinks on that platform as well. And those are already in submission. That's one of the next pieces that we're doing. And then we have plans to submit another set or 2 of our products. Again, on the high end, we have a 40 gig copper rack platform where you have 32 ports of 40 gig and a 1 RU form factor, and that's important, especially with some of the high capacity video that we see coming out with uncompressed video possibly needing those high pieces, or acting as a spine in some of the larger configurations of a network. And then also we have, on the very, very low end, we have a layer 2 only product that's gigabit Ethernet called the 430. Much lower CPU, much lower in terms of scale and capacity, but it's really a very low-cost entry point product. And we'll be submitting that one as well. Again, all of these products run the same software. They run the same compiled load, actually, and we really think it's going to go right through this process with little or no work on our part, hopefully. That's the plan.
No. Todd, then talk a second about your process. From Bob talked about from his standpoint, taking it maybe a couple of weeks, and the fact that from the manufacturer's standpoint, you guys have all the tools and everything you need. You've already got your first product. You obviously got several in the pipeline. From the manufacturer's standpoint, how has getting your products AVB certified been for you guys?
So there's a lot of steps to doing features and products inside of a switch vendor company like Extreme Networks. Part of it is going through business justification at the beginning and rationalizing the amount of effort that it's going to take to do. And first of all, we had to make sure do we have existing platforms that could support it, or do we have to create new platforms? And that was good for us because we're always on the leading edge with the new off-the-shelf merchant silicon and so that off-the-shelf merchant silicon supported AVB. Basically, you need timestamping and hardware in order to make the AVB protocols work. Everything else is mostly in software for the most part, and can be done if you have the right CPU set in place. And so we had the hardware in place. We just needed to justify the software development effort on our side, and we went through the business justification. We saw a big market being unaddressed, right? In our case, we love Ethernet. We think Ethernet should be everywhere. We lead a lot of the times in the Ethernet space, like we did with EAPS, which is a routing protocol that was adopted by the IETF as a standard. And we really want, if there's an area or market niche where there is no Ethernet, like in the audio-video space that's standardized, based off standards, we really think that's a great place to be because we're good at it, so it's good for us, but we also think it's good for our end customers who get a lot of competition in the space because if it's all standards-based, anybody can build it, and when you have anybody building it or multiple people building it, you get competition as well as innovation, and the competition drives down the cost points of the products, and the innovation drives the number of features and things that are available to the end customer as well.
Yeah, so both of the things are very, very positive things. Rick, this has been a big year for AVB and the AVnu Alliance. You kicked off the year with a number of high-profile additions to your cadre of members. In addition to that, Todd and the gang got their first certified product, and your first certified product. So what has this is the middle of May. What has 2014 held so far for the AVnu Alliance, and what do you think is going to happen in the second half of the year?
Yeah, so thank you. This year's been a great year for us already. Last year we added more member companies than any year since our first inception year, and we've already kicked off. We've added almost half that number of members already in the first quarter this year. So we've added another 5 members already, and so it's we're seeing just continued examples of people coming in. So we're going to see the first certified endpoints for Pro A, and we'll see a lot of traction from those products. So we have quite a few at Bob's test facility in the pipeline, and then we've got also a lot of work going on in the other markets. AVB is really expanding out into this technology is really useful in a lot of places. We have a whole automotive focus that's going on, and we're seeing expansions into other areas, which for me as a maker of products, kind of to echo something else Todd said, the great thing about this being standards-based technology is I've got silicon providers making silicon for me, and so having these wide markets outside of Pro AV is really helpful for bringing those costs down. You think about something as simple as ASCBU. Would that have ever gotten low cost if there wasn't SPDIF, as an example? And these cost points have always been one of the real challenges on networking. Really, with the standards-based approach, we can really have that.
What let's say somebody watching this or listening to this, and they've heard of AVB and the AVnu Alliance through AV channels. Honestly, what's maybe one or two members that they would be surprised were members coming, again, looking at this and thinking about this from the audio-visual side of things. But what's maybe one or two members of the AVnu Alliance that they would be surprised would be members?
Yeah, I think probably some of the, we got some pretty diverse membership.
Mm-hmm.
So there are the car makers, your GM, your BMW, your Hyundai. We have Parrot, who most people know as their AR drone and those fun products that they make. But a lot of people don't know that they actually are a large tier one as well in the automotive industry. And they've joined because they're doing AVB work for automotive. So that's kind of probably one of the more diverse members, and they just joined recently.
Bob, from that standpoint, the first time you get a BMW car at the university, in all seriousness, that's something that you're going to have to do, right? Whether it's an automobile or it's a switch like Todd, or it's an audio and video transmitter. How is it that you guys take? Does this go back to standards where you guys take, whether regardless of what the product is, you keep that same rigorous standards from start to finish when you go to test a product, or does it vary depending on the application?
So it certainly will vary based on the use cases, the marketing requirements, the technical requirements in the case of AVnu certification as defined by the Alliance. However, it all is rooted back into the standards process. And just to echo, I think, what Rick was mentioning about AVnu Alliance's involvement in the ecosystem and promotion of these standards, I'm here at the IEEE 802.1 meetings here in Norfolk, Virginia, where many of the AVnu Alliance members are very actively promoting, the standards effort here, and just promoting the needs for the current and emerging use cases that Rick mentions. And I see this continuing, as the expansion of the use of AVB and time-sensitive networks just continues. So all of these will be strongly supported by standards, well adopted, I think, by the industry. And through our involvement at the Interoperability Lab at the University of New Hampshire, what we bring to the table is the 25 years of experience we have both in Ethernet networking technology test, conformance and interoperability test, and many other technology aspects that help round out the solution space. We already are addressing automotive Ethernet technologies. We're contributing to the .3 and the .1 efforts in the space, as are many of the AVnu Alliance members. And I can only see this as being a strong ecosystem that is going to be producing very compliant, very interoperable products that solve what are currently solutions that are only driven by proprietary spaces. This should be a market enabler and broadener in my assessment.
Yeah. Real quickly before I let you go completely, you mentioned previously that a lot of times the providers, the manufacturers, will get together for what's called a Plugfest. Real quickly, and not to be simplistic here, but some people may have never heard that term or are unfamiliar with what that is. Real briefly, give people kind of a 50,000-foot view of what exactly a Plugfest is, as far as AVB is concerned.
In the simplest of senses, this is where your various members of the AVnu Alliance are coming together, competitor and competitor, working side by side, trying to root out the cause of whatever issue they may have in a prototype, trying to take that feedback back to their company, back to the Alliance, or even in many cases back to the standards body, saying, look here, the standard has a gap, it has an ambiguity. So it's very, very beneficial in the draft standards process. This is why this has been going on for years, and will continue as new use cases continue to emerge. But there's a great deal of test that can come together when all these various engineering minds from these companies are in the same room and they see a problem going on. The technical merits of a better solution usually emerge pretty quickly, and to the Alliance and to the standards process, get driven for improvement, or to the vendor's product improvement path. So it is a very inclusive process for the membership to bring their products together and look for issues and root them out well before they'd be experienced in the field. Okay. Hopefully never.
Yeah, hopefully never, but it does happen.
Right. And I have to say, Kim, from having been through this in the field and sending guys on site last minute, this is something that is common in other industries, but it's never been done as far as networking in our industry before. We've never had a uh, forum where we could bring products together that were networked. You could try them out. You never had this ability to have the test equipment in your own facility. So we really never had this opportunity. You were just hoping that if I get a card, let's say I'm using, it was Cobranet, Ethersound, it was any of these guys, you would get a card and you would hope that, well, if I plug this in, hopefully that works with another manufacturer. You never got a chance to really sit down in a safe environment where we could try these things out. And I've been through that with the job sites with the firmware versions that actually were incompatible, and you didn't find out till it was really way late in the game, and everyone's scrambling, and you're hoping you still make the install. And this is it's a whole different world that this industry hasn't had before, but it's coming. It's how your Wi-Fi works. It's why your Bluetooth works. It's why these things work right now. You take it for granted in your daily life, but that was all done through the same process.
Well, yeah, and that's not to overuse a term that a lot of us have heard over the last few years, but that's the whole the ITing of AV, and some people bemoan that, but this testing process and that Plugfest process really does kind of make the integrator's life a lot easier. Because you're right, there's nothing worse than hearing the manufacturer say, "Why don't you roll back the firmware a couple revisions and see if that works."
Yeah.
Todd, real quickly for you guys, Rick kind of answered this at the beginning. I want to get your take on it as well. What problems, from your standpoint, from the switching standpoint, does AVB solve? Where are the pain points in the network that not just Extreme Networks, but Extreme Networks with AVB? What does that solve for the integrator putting this stuff in?
Well, from what I've been learning, because I'm a networking guy coming into the audio-video world, and so I've been watching with a network view. And what's obvious to me is that most of the people using an AVB network are the audio-video endpoint guys, and they know nothing about networking. They don't know how to they don't know how to set up QoS, or quality of service, on a switch. They don't know how to set up priority of the flows. They don't know how to set up a reservation. They don't know how to set up timing, or configure the timing, or configure a VLAN ID, or which VLAN ID to use, or how do I troubleshoot whether when something didn't make it through the network? Was it because there wasn't enough bandwidth? Was it because it wasn't labeled correctly? Was it because it was sharing port data with other, sharing the same port with other data? No audio-video guy that I've met so far can sit down on a networking switch and troubleshoot that information or set that up. And we want to make that, that's what AVB does, is it makes that whole problem really go away. Everything is automated, all the signaling is automated, so that you don't have to be a networking guy in order to use the network. You just enable AVB on our switch, which is one thing to do, and everything is set up automatically. All the protocols from the endpoints discover the next hops, and the timing is automatic, the QoS is automatic, the priorities are automatic, the bandwidth reservation is automatic. So all that's done for you. And so for us, the problem that solves is it reduces the amount of phone calls we get and customer service issues, and why isn't it working? When a lot of times, especially with customers who aren't networking, is the problem isn't that the product is bad or the software is got a bug. It's more it's not configured correctly, or you've set it up incorrectly, and all that is now removed, so the deployment goes much smoother. The networking side of the deployment is all automated and removes all of the complexities and the issues and the time lost. The amount of time lost where you've had a deployment go in and the audio guy, well, I don't know anything about networking, I got to call the networking guy, and the networking guy tries to troubleshoot it, and then he calls for support, right? And that whole time is all now removed, and it's all automated. We think that's the biggest advantage for us, is the amount of complexity removed and the less headaches for our customers in deploying things.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that a lot of people forget about is that labor cost, right? Where from the customer, the end user, all the way up through the integrator, that time cannot be recovered once it's spent. You can go into a system, and because you don't know a lot about networking, or you don't know a lot about this, that, and the other, and so a lot of integrators will build pads in for the time that the labor spent on site troubleshooting. Once that's removed, not only do you, as the integrator, not have to spend it, you don't have to pay the tech, but you also don't have to charge the client. So they're happy, you're happy, and the tech
Also,
isn't
there's a
frustrated.
little bit of a love-hate relationship between what I've noticed is, the audio-video, it's like left brain, right brain environments to me. But the audio-video world and the IT world are different. And
Oh, yeah.
if the audio-video world could go through life without ever having to call the IT department, they would love it, right? And so this gives the ability to, set it up once and be done, and then just use the network without having to ever have the issues or troubleshooting or the IT phone calls that they have to make for support. And so they're able to do everything from their end, from the endpoints, from an audio-video world, and keep the IT guys at bay and only use them in critical, when something goes wrong that they have to troubleshoot, but it's very rare.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, Rick, we're going to kick this off with you real quickly, couple minutes here. Build me an AVB system, right? Build me from microphone through speaker. Hopefully not too close to the speaker. But Rick, we'll start with you. So let's start by real quickly giving me an overview of maybe a crash course on how to design at least an AVB system.
Sure. So I think it's not too different from what we've been doing as an industry with other network systems, whether it was Kubernetes or other ones. You really need to look for the devices that are AVnu certified, so that they've got, that they've got the interoperability together, and then you're really looking at, building the right network infrastructure, so that you've got plenty of bandwidth to actually handle that. And then from there, you're not having to do, like Todd mentioned, you're not having to do a lot of the configuration, right? So you can let a lot of the basic standards things deal with, simple redundancy failovers or other things without having to get into a lot of complex configurations and such. So really, it comes down to, getting rid of what we would normally think of all the IT things, and say, okay, let's get an AVnu certified microphone. That's going to come out, and you've got that. It's going Cat5 into the network. You got switch infrastructure, the network infrastructure, and then you've got your amplifier or the powered speaker that's going to come off that, mixing board in between, and we've got the ability to go and actually route those signals. So you can use these open protocols out of 1722.1. It's called AVDEC. That lets you actually discover any of the talkers, discover any of the listeners, so you kind of know the sinks and sources. Think of it more in AV terms. And then you can route, really any signal to any signal. And then once it comes up and sets that reservation, it's just going to do that again the next time it powers up. So you can pre-configure it or do it on the job site, of course. And so it really is. It's not too different from what we've been doing in the world before, thinking all the way back through Kubernetes times. But the whole complexity has gone down dramatically. Having to do things like I used to do with managing VLANs and how many devices are on which VLAN and how do you cross VLANs and all that kind of mess that I'm used to having to do, or manage QoS levels or things like that. All that bit, which would normally involve a ton of spreadsheets and beforehand time, and then you would roll through all the switches doing all this configuration. That whole part of the job, that's gone. You don't do it beforehand, you don't worry about it on site.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, guys, real quickly, Rick, you guys, AVnu Alliance will be at Infocomm. As the last few years has proven, the AVnu Alliance Pavilion is a very interesting place because you do have, as you guys have talked about, the interoperability, the Plugfest. I think I've said this more than once. Last year at the Infocomm show 2013, you had a Sennheiser mic going into a Shure Auto Mixer going into a Yamaha board feeding a Pro Tools session. So what do you guys have planned for this year, for this year's Infocomm 2014?
Yeah, so at the Pavilion this year we've got quite a few member companies who are again showing off, and it's kind of fun, to be honest, to watch it form together, because people are contacting each other. Hey, do you want to show your product with my product? And they know they can just, because they've been going through Plugfest, they know it's going to work. And so people are putting together little example systems. We've done the bit where we put everyone onto the same network just to show it could be done.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to show things a little bit more targeted, like here's systems that make sense together, so you could think about this as an example products for this particular segment market. So whether it's a live sound setup, or whether it's a performing arts center setup, or more something you would think about for a convention center. So we're kind of organizing more that way. We'll also have we have a training seminar that we're doing beforehand that qualifies for credits, and that's being run. It's a 2-hour training course about networking and designing with AV systems, and that will be a very good training seminar for anyone who wants to really get deep into it and understand more of the benefits and how you would go through designing the systems. And then we've got, throughout the show, we'll be doing our regular education things. So we'll have kind of an AVnu overview presentation we're rolling. Plus we've got member presentations showing their different solutions, both product and also some enabling technology. So a good mix of people who make end equipment and people who make, whether it's silicon or middleware or those pieces, will be at the pavilion. We also don't miss the chance to throw a party. So we've got the first day of the show, we've got a nice little cocktail event where you can meet and greet and just meet people casually, learn more about Reliance, things like that. And that's sponsored by Extreme and Biamp and Yamaha. They're sponsoring that. So it's going to be, again, a good show for us.
Very good. And to clarify, the credits that you can get are the Infocomm renewal credits for your CTS or your CTS.
Yes, correct.
So, all right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been the AVnu Alliance podcast. Rick Whitfield, AVnu Alliance President and Chair. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Bob Noseworthy has been here as well. He is the Chief Engineer at UNH, and he's also a part of the AVnu Alliance Testing House. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. And last but not least, Todd Akery. Todd is from Extreme Networks and the proud owner of the very first AVnu Alliance AVB certified product. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tim, and I'll see you at Infocomm.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been the AVnu Alliance podcast.